Welcome to the Finding Purpose podcast. My name is Adam, and I am your host. This is a special episode for me because it is going to be my first solo episode, and it's really going to be a reflective episode on where I'm talking about a lot of the things that I've learned through this journey this past year, both through this podcast and with all of the things that I've had going on this year. And it's been a crazy year for me. And I've taken on a lot of new lessons. I've opened a bunch of new relationships, and I've learned a tremendous amount about myself and who I am and what direction that I want to go and where I really feel that I can serve my purpose. A lot of you may not know, but back in September of last year, I had launched a business and it was called ARV Enterprises. It is called ARV Enterprises. And, the purpose of that business was I wanted to work with nonprofits and I wanted to have an impact and I wanted to really help the communities that I frequent on a day-to-day basis. During this past year, I was really blessed with that opportunity to meet folks in the nonprofit space and work with different foundations, some of them which I hold really dear to me. Reflecting on that journey with the nonprofits, I had a great year working with the In-Service Foundation in New York City. The In-Service Foundation is founded by Natasha Silverbell and Felipe Gernstein. That was particularly important because when I became involved with them, I was involved with them first as a beneficiary. What they do is they provide substance abuse counseling and mental health counseling. And over the past 2 years that I've been sober, and that relationship has evolved into something that I'm really, really proud of. I was able to be a beneficiary of the In-Service Foundation early on 2 years ago, where they had set me up with a sobriety coach to prop alongside the 12-step programming that I do on my own, going to meetings and working a 12-step program. And it really allowed me to peel the layers below not just, getting sober, but just all of the underlying issues that I had both dealing with family, which I've alluded in episodes throughout the year with my family and, grief and loss and all of these things that I had bottled up. That relationship would eventually evolve where I don't want to say graduate because you never really graduate when it comes to recovery, but where I no longer needed their services that the foundation provided. And I was able to really take on a role where I advocated for the foundation because I do believe in it. And I had the opportunity to speak at their annual gala 2 years ago. And, that opened up a door where I was able to speak at an event in Miami to a large base of their donors. And it was such a fulfilling thing for me to do. Public speaking was something that I really embraced after doing a couple speaker schools with Brandon Godoris and Warm Heart Life. And, now I was able to do that for a cause that was so meaningful for me. As that relationship evolved, one of the biggest milestones of the past year was being added to their advisory board and being able to really contribute to the foundation and become more involved with the different aspects of their programming. And a lot of people don't know this because I don't really talk about it. I was able to host a weekly roundtable with a bunch of their beneficiaries where I was able to just ask them what's going on in their life, not really in a medical role. Obviously, they have their medical team and they have their counselors as they go through, but just as somebody else who also was a beneficiary of In-Service and who utilizes their services as a way to really elevate my recovery and elevate just my mindset. And, that was one of the most fulfilling things that I was able to do this year. Sitting down with them, being able to just talk to them like regular people, treat them like regular people, and build a relationship with them. And, I can't thank Executive Director of In Service, Carly Wargo, enough for that opportunity. As the year evolved with In Service, I was able to also honor one of those gentlemen, Alex, who was a recipient and who had shown such tremendous growth over the past year. And that happened at this last gala back in October. And that was a really cool moment because not only for my relationship with In Service, but also in the way that I public speak, because more often than not, when I public speak, it really is telling stories that resonated with me, sharing my own experiences rather than I was edifying Alex and his journey. And, I was able to step outside myself and understand that this wasn't about me. This was sharing with this large group of beneficiaries that this worked with me, but this also is working with Alex also. I do, encourage folks to visit the In Service Foundation's website, inservicefoundation.org, and explore their homepage and explore the events and look for opportunities for you to really become involved. Because I do think that, mental health and substance abuse is something that touches all of us. And it's something that, while it's becoming a little more mainstream to talk about, it's also something that a lot of people are very wary about taking ownership when it comes to the people who they most love. Because, something that I've alluded to throughout the year, that much of my story, I had attributed a lot of shame and a lot of guilt to the things that I had done or the experiences that I had put myself in. And, now it's very much something I embrace and something that I'm proud to be an advocate for. So that relationship, with that nonprofit was amazing. A lot of you over the past year saw that I had been working with the Carlos Redon Foundation. That was such a tremendous experience for me, meeting Ashley and Carlos and how that relationship grew and how that project grew, and really immersing myself into the nonprofit space and understanding how it works and, all these different components that I really didn't know much about going into it. I knew business management. I knew certain components when it came to the networking, that really added the most value when it came to that project. But the opportunity to see someone who was so passionate about something that they had struggled with in Ashley. And, that's a relationship, if I really think about it, that dominated very much a lot of this past year for me, where, learning how she worked and what she liked and what she wanted, and how passionate that she was, just kind of spilled over into the amount of dedication that I really put for her and her foundation. Because it's almost contagious when you see how strongly someone believes in something. It's almost impossible for you not to just like support it, where it's like, okay, like I almost want to do this for you, but like because you're not even doing it for you. You're doing it because you want to help others who had experienced the same thing as her and Carlos had, which was, repeated losses and finally being able to have the family that they always wanted. That experience was so cool because I also obviously I had an opportunity to be on Yankee Stadium, be on the field at Yankee Stadium, which is rare, and I would learn that it's very rare from Ashley apparently. And just like that, the doors and the relationships that opened for me was amazing, culminating in the night of a gala. And it's so funny because, I remember when me and Ashley had first discussed this, it was back in October-ish, November-ish of 2023. And I remember we were discussing a gala, and I'd thrown this idea at her, and we were just gonna we wanted to do it like soon. And I remember just like kind of asking around different, local philanthropists and mentors that I've met along the way, and they're like, dude, like that's like a 8-month project, and you guys want to do it in this, like that's crazy. And we didn't rush into it. We let the idea blossom, and Ashley, with like her stellar team and long running relationships that she had, and uniting all of those people. I mean, it was really cool to watch someone who had this vision, and she was able to materialize it. And some of the things that I learned from Ashley is really just like the ability to not just don't accept a no and follow your gut. And that's something that I think she does to a T. And watching someone with really good instincts when it comes to not only people, but what feeds her energy and what aligns with what her vision is. And it really culminated in that evening, which I think complemented exactly what she had envisioned. And I was really proud to be working alongside her because, not only was it cool to have a front row seat to how she worked, I learned a lot about how I work and what I like and what I wanted to do, when I, was able to kind of settle down and look at what we had done and see what I really enjoyed. That's kind of like a segue into where I want my business to move over the next year. The thing that I enjoyed the most out of that entire experience was managing the event. When it came to coordination, when it came to communication and ensuring that Ashley's vision was the way she wanted and the timing was cool, and establishing relationships. And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed. And, moving into 2025, I really want to lean heavily into the event management component of it, because I've also found a tremendous passion in the podcasting space. This podcast has been one of the most rewarding experiences of 2025 and arguably my life, because after I was able to detach the shame from my story and understanding that there's a lot of power behind my lived experience, I realized that there's a lot of people who have stories where their lived experience can add value to others. And they may very well feel the same way that I did a few years ago, where they didn't think it had meaning. And over the past 36 episodes, that's a tribute to that, where I've brought on such amazing guests. And I'm not saying that just because they were guests on my podcast. I'm saying that because the amount of vulnerability that my guests have shared over the past 36 weeks really helped to shape the way that I want to approach this podcast in the upcoming years and beyond. Alessia Adler came in here and she talked about how her parent separation rocked her perspective and had an impact on her marriage down the road, and how it affected the way that she parented. These are things that so many mothers and so many people can relate to in their own lives. I had Dorothy coming in and talking about how her approach to parenting is so hands-on because she was this single child who didn't get that herself because of her own family situation. Then she ended up going into the city and chasing the limelight as a celebrity news reporter because that is what the inner child of her so needed, and how she's become this voice of just amazing inspiration now here locally with that Greenwich Life and her podcast, and she's speaking her truth. That was beautiful. Tony Peck coming in here talking about how he just was a grinder from day one, and how it started at his grandfather's pizzeria, and how family values really just shaped the way that he approaches relationships, and he's built an empire of his own. Like, that's powerful stuff. You know, Dave Regina coming in here, sharing his own mother's bout with addiction, how it affected him, how he leans on his faith, how he has made it a life's mission to help redefine masculinity with his partner, Sean Degnan, with their community that they're building in ACE. Like, that is a beautiful thing. I had close friends of mine also, Rob Trax. That's someone whose story I've heard over sushi, but when he sat down here in this chair right next to me, he really peeled back the layer of the loss of his father and how dedicated he was to working almost with blinders on, and life was passing him by. And now he helps men optimize their time. He helps them optimize their bodies and be the best performers as they can, but being present in everything that they can do. That is powerful. A mentor of mine, Brandon Godoris, just sitting here. And, Brandon there's nothing that I can't say about Brandon that I haven't already said. Brandon has been one of the most impactful people in my life over the past 2 years. Because Brandon is the type of person, if he believes in you, he will do whatever he can to make sure that you are elevating. And he invites you into his community, and he leads with humility, and he inspires with his words, and he speaks truth. And just the way he's embraced me along this journey has been second to none, frankly. And, I'm hopeful that he is a lifelong friend. Beth Brown, who I featured on my first episode ever. And I remember I reached out to her, and she immediately was like, all right, yes, I'm going, like, no problem. And Beth has become, a very good friend of mine. But in that first episode, like, how vulnerable she was when she talked about relationships and she talked about trauma, and then she pivoted and she talked about forgiveness. And she talked about how forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. These are the people who have had such a tremendous impact, and the conversations that really moved me. The special episodes that I featured particularly were important to me. Having my sister on this podcast was amazing because I'm probably way more comfortable with being vulnerable with my story, but also I've been very vulnerable with our family story. My family story that me and Amber both lived together was very, very hard, I think, for her to hear. But when I had her on the podcast, she was very vulnerable in ways that I hadn't heard her be vulnerable. And that meant a lot to me because, my sister and I are each other's best supporters. And while I'm more of the extrovert than she is, we have had the type of relationship where, like we could always call one another, and we have the same shared dynamic when it comes to our parents. And while I hope that, me and her can grow together through forgiveness and through understanding that everything happens for a reason, like I also understand that, we both have our own individual journeys where we're going to go at our own pace. But like Amber, I love you if you're listening. And I'm just so proud of you. And I'm so grateful to have had your support. And I can only hope that I am making you proud. And then my second special episode, I featured my best friend Joe Fortunato, and that was a cool episode because me and Joe back in the day did some wild things, but he's always been there for me. He's more of a brother. When he moved to Arizona, I was very much visiting him out in Scottsdale, and I remember, this one time, like I went out there and I rented out this suite in this like resort, and him and his brothers just like stayed with me for the entire time. And like that's how it is with me and Joey. Like we pick up where we left off, and I hope that episode brought a lot of insight into what it was like growing up and how I was once like, because oftentimes I do allude to like what I was like, you know had Joe to provide a little more context so that you, as my listeners, have a better understanding of the the spiritual journey that I am embarking on, fueled by growth and the constant quest for learning more about myself, and also at the end of the day, the ability to look myself in the mirror and be proud and be happy with who I am becoming. You know, I'm super grateful for so many of the lessons that I've learned this past year. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned is how important it is to invest in relationships. Investing in relationships is probably the most important thing for me right now because I have been able to really meet people where they are. And I feel like that's something that I struggled with in the past, where I needed people to meet me where I was. And when I became willing to meet people where they are and kind of understand their perspective and understand that what they're going through isn't, let me word this better. When I became open-minded to meet people where they are and understand their perspective, it allowed me to really get to know who they were and understand that not everything is about me, with the way that people speak to me, with the way that people treat me, and with the way that people react to me. I think I've been able to have deeper, more impactful relationships because I don't have an expectation of everyone who crosses my path. I just don't. I have been really trying to consciously accept people for who they are and understand their unique journey has beauty in itself. That has allowed me to really have honest and open relationships with people and learn a lot about myself through those relationships. A lot of it is, a lot of those relationships have opened my eyes to how truly resilient people are. When you really learn about what people are going through and it it's a testament to just human resilience in general. A lot of the folks know, like I do go to AA meetings, and I do um, work a 12-step program. And I want to tell you a story. So yesterday, I am filming this a couple of days before New Year's Eve. Yesterday, I went to a Christmas Day meeting in a town nearby. And I'm sitting around this table, and I'm listening to folks tell me about like what their Christmas was like. And across the table, there's a gentleman, and he's sharing about a story about how his kids aren't talking to him, and how he is really resentful over it, and he was sending passive aggressive messages, and you could tell he felt like shit about it. But at the end of the day, he was really, really hurt that his children chose their mother over him, and he felt completely betrayed. Another gentleman shared about how his son is in a really dark place, and how he spent the Christmas Day giving gifts to him in the hospital, and how it was perception of that experience was, I'm just grateful that I have this opportunity to give my son presents regardless of the environment that he was in. But you could tell that he was hurt, and you could tell that he was hurt because his child was hurt. And that's something that I think is so impactful, that there are people who can look at that and say, listen, like, it could be so much worse. And listening to that gentleman share about his son, and seeing the pain in his eyes when he was talking about it, really put a lot into perspective for me. My Christmas I spent with my girlfriend, and we had a great time. We went to my best friend's home. My best friend from high school, Steve, his parents' home, and in that room, it was just like such a beautiful show of love and support, and what the holidays really encompasses. But it was unlike most holidays where we do spend it with family, and it was a little bittersweet that we didn't spend it with our own families. But at the end of the day, we made the best out of a situation, because I think that's really all we can do. This past year, when I have assessed like situations, I kind of accept situations for how they arrive. I can look at it from that old way of thinking, where I could poke holes and I could point out the flaws, and I could say, I wish it was like this. I don't do that anymore. It's a waste of time. Because if I walk into an environment and I just take it all in and I let it come to me, I'm really able to embrace it as something that was something beautiful. One of the biggest quotes that I will continue to talk about and that I love was when my guest Neil Bakshi a couple of weeks ago had said, everything is perfect. And it's something that I can't get out of my head. Everything is perfect. That's a mindset that I want to bring into 2025. That is how I want my 2025 to be. That is going to be the motto of my 2025. Everything is perfect. Because it is the most resounding, deepest, full-throated brand of acceptance that you can approach anything with. Where even the imperfect is perfect, because that is how God wants it. I love meeting people who have that type of mindset, because when they do, then that allows them to be more versatile. When you're all accepting of circumstance, of people, and of positions. It helps to really further pursue that self-mastery that is all so important. I haven't mastered myself this year. I've gotten better. One of the things that I lean on heavily is the desire to master this emotional regulation. And one of the things that I've learned over the past year is there's no such thing as perfect emotional regulation. Some days you're going to be good at it. Some days you're going to be bad at it. Days that you're bad at it, you can go the next day and you could own what you were bad at. So whether it was harboring a resentment towards a shitty coworker, whether it was harboring resentment towards a sibling, whether it was anger towards a parent, that you displayed peak emotion, you can go back and you can make that right. This is a skill that obviously I've learned through working a 12-step program where it's about, accepting those resentment or facing those resentments and making them right again, which for me is extremely important. If I walk around carrying resentment all day and I let every little thing bother me, the consequences for me are going to be a lot different than it might be for someone who isn't an alcoholic or an addict. But at the end of the day, this is a concept that is important for everyone to be able to live free and eventually master themselves. It's also a tool that they're going to be able to use when it comes to balancing life demands. Because for me, I recently posted about balance and people's different approaches to balance. And if I'm being completely honest, this past year was a very balanced year for me. When I was in the throes of working on the gala, I leaned heavily into that, where my public speaking ambitions really kind of had to take a back seat. When I launched this podcast and I was able to, and I really jumped into it, my business kind of hurt because I wasn't really chasing business when it came to the nonprofit space. But for me, I understand that, imbalance and discomfort is something that I can now navigate as long as I am running with pure intentions. But, the clarity that the imbalance has given me has really shaped the trajectory of my next year, which is really important. This next year, recently someone asked me, they're like, if you could do anything for the rest of your life that would pay for your way of life, what would it be? And I was like, you know what, man, I'm really enjoying doing this podcasting thing. I really enjoy the conversations I'm having. I really enjoy the community that I'm building. I'm really enjoying the feedback that I'm getting back. But most importantly, I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm impacting people positively by sharing my own experience and connecting with someone else. So, it's in that spirit where I, recently was able to have an opportunity to work with the production company that makes my podcast called Pod Populi. This upcoming year, I will be working with them as their chief business development officer, helping them, just in their studios and really whatever the CEO and owner want. But what it's going to do is also allow me to really immerse myself into the podcasting space and learning everything about it that I might need to know. Because I do think that, growing this podcast is going to be at the forefront, but growing myself and my name in the field is really important to me. And learning from someone like Brian Howie, who owns Pod Populi, is something that I think I could have a great mentor in this space. So I'm really excited for that opportunity. I've dabbled with so many different things. I've thrown so many different things against the wall this year and hoping that they would stick. Not really hoping that they would stick. I threw a lot of things against the wall, and now I'm beginning to see what's sticking. And I don't really have any shame in the fact that, you know what, as rewarding as the nonprofit space was for me, that's something that I want to do when I establish a foundation for my in the future, helping people who I really want to help, but I'm not in that place yet. And I'm okay backpedaling from that dream if it means that uh, that there's a couple more components involved before I get to it. I do still plan on hosting high end events here in the Greenwich community, in the whole Fairfield County community, for the fact of that matter, and really getting involved. Folks who are looking to have it and really getting involved, folks who want to come and have a great experience and meet like-minded individuals. This really all stems back to my job when I was working sales at Equinox, where I was surrounded by top performers, and I saw that the way that people moved, and I saw that go-getters are go-getters regardless of where they are. And that is something that I want to emulate. And that is what 2025 is going to be about. Going to get it with going to get it with an everything is perfect mentality, accepting what comes my way, changing from within, and embracing new people, new experiences, and new journeys. It is in that spirit that I want to wish you all a happy new year, a prosperous 2025 of self-growth, of enlightenment, and of wisdom. Look forward to seeing you guys on the flip side.